I guess I should start with a little background. My name is Mark, and I've been married to Jessica for 7 years. We met in college, a whirlwind romance that led to the conventional happy ever after, complete with a nice house and a couple of dogs. At first, everything felt perfect. We had our routine. I'd work my 9 to 5 in it, and she'd handle her job as a marketing executive. It was a comfortable life, with light banter over dinner and shared dreams about the future. But lately I started feeling that something was off. It began with small things, like just suddenly being too busy for our usual weekend outings. At first, she claimed it was work stress or late-night meetings. I believed her. After all, she was ambitious, and I admired that about her. But then came the little white lies, forgetting to text me when she said she would, avoiding eye contact when she spoke, and a sudden obsession with her appearance. She was spending more time at the gym and had started buying new clothes and makeup, even though she always thought it was unnecessary before. One Wednesday evening, I got home early from work, excited to surprise her with a nice dinner. I pulled into the driveway and saw her car parked. Everything seemed normal until I noticed that her phone was buzzing on the kitchen counter. I picked it up and without thinking too much, I glanced at the screen. There it was, a text from a guy named Ryan, just a car salesman. She had mentioned him casually a few times. The text read, "Can't wait to see you tonight, babe. I have a surprise for you." My heart dropped. I felt a cold sweat break over me. I hadn't seen Ryan in person, but I knew he was a smooth-talking guy from the dealership. Jess had gone in a few weeks ago to test drive a car. She always said it was just to window shop. But now I was starting to piece things together. I put her phone back down and tried to calm myself. Maybe it was innocent, but deep down I felt the knot tightening in my stomach. Later that night, when Jess came home, the atmosphere felt different. I was quiet and she immediately noticed. "What's wrong?" she asked, her eyebrow raised in that way that always made me feel like I was under scrutiny. I couldn't contain myself. I confronted her about Ryan and the messages. Her initial response was the classic defensive reaction. She laughed it off, called it a misunderstanding. "He's just being friendly, Mark," she said, rolling her eyes. "You know how car salesmen are." But I wasn't buying it. I pressed harder, demanding to know why she was texting him in such an intimate manner. Her excuses flew out like a poorly rehearsed script, and I could see the cracks in her facade. "You're being paranoid," she said, folding her arms. "You know how busy I've been lately. You're overreacting." I felt like I was in a nightmare, watching as the woman I thought I knew twisted words and spun stories with a casual ease that sent chills down my spine. I asked her outright if she was cheating. She hesitated, the look in her eyes shifting from annoyance to something else, guilt perhaps. I knew at that moment that the trust we had built was crumbling. After a long, tense pause, she finally spat out, "If you don't trust me, maybe we shouldn't be together." It felt like a slap in the face. I had wanted to talk, to understand, but instead she flipped it on me. How was I the bad guy in this situation? The night ended with me feeling more confused than ever, but the seed of doubt had been planted. I went to bed angry and heartbroken, her words echoing in my mind. I had to know the truth. I couldn't let this go. My gut was telling me that Ryan was more than just a car salesman. I decided then and there that I would find out what was really going on. As the days went on, Jess's behavior continued to raise alarms. She was evasive, and her late nights had become more frequent. I started to watch her closely, searching for any sign of deception. The trust that I had in her was eroding faster than I could have ever imagined. And with each passing day, the anger within me began to ignite a darker feeling: revenge. I would find a way to confront this head-on, but first, I needed solid proof. I took the next few days to gather my thoughts and plan my next steps. I didn't want to act rashly, but I also couldn't shake the feeling that I was being played for a fool. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. I needed evidence to confront Jess. I reached out to some mutual friends, casually asking if they had seen Jess with Ryan or if they had noticed anything odd. Most shrugged it off, but one friend, Mike, who was a car enthusiast, mentioned he saw Jess and Ryan at the car dealership during the weekend. They seemed cozy, sharing laughs and flirting. The knot in my stomach tightened. I had to see it for myself. That Saturday, I decided to visit the dealership under the pretense of shopping for a new car. While I wasn't really in the market, I knew the place well enough from Jess's previous visits. I walked in casually, scanning the lot for any sign of them. As luck would have it, I spotted her in the back lot, leaning against a shiny new SUV, chatting with none other than Ryan, who had his signature charming grin on. They were too engrossed in conversation to notice me watching from a distance. I felt a surge of bile rise in my throat. I couldn't hear what they were saying, but the body language told me everything I needed to know. The way she smiled at him, way more than she ever smiled at me, made my blood boil. It was sickening. Ryan leaned in and she laughed, lightly pushing him away, but the flirtation was palpable. I felt like I was watching a movie and I was the unwilling star. I slipped back to my car, fuming. I couldn't believe this was happening. Jess had been lying to me for who knows how long. Memories of our life together, her laughter, our late-night talks, the dreams of starting a family, began to feel like a cruel joke. How could she do this? I decided it was time to confront her again, but this time I'd come prepared. I needed a plan. I wanted her to understand the gravity of what she was doing. That evening, I approached her in a different way. I acted as if nothing was wrong, putting on my best poker face. We sat down for dinner, the atmosphere thick with tension, and I casually brought up the topic of cars, trying to gauge her reaction. "So, how was your day at the dealership?" I asked, feigning interest. Jess looked up, her fork hovering midair. "Oh, it was fine, just running errands really. You know how it goes," she replied, avoiding my gaze. I decided to push harder. "Did you see Ryan there?" I asked, trying to sound casual. Her reaction was immediate. She froze, her eyes darting to mine, searching for clues. "Yeah, he was there. Just doing his job, Mark. It's not a big deal," she said, the defensiveness creeping into her voice. "Not a big deal." "Jess, you were practically wrapped around him, laughing like you were at some kind of comedy show." I didn't want to raise my voice, but the frustration was bubbling over. "I saw you." Her face paled, and for a moment I thought I saw a flicker of guilt. But then she composed herself, crossing her arms defiantly. "You're being ridiculous. He's just a car salesman. You know I'd never cheat on you." The denial felt hollow. I could hear the lies in her voice, and it made me want to scream. "Then explain the text messages, Jess. Explain why you were flirting with him at the dealership." I leaned in, my voice low but intense. "This isn't just paranoia anymore, this is real." In that moment the mask slipped. She unraveled in front of me, the brassy confidence faded, replaced by a mix of anger and panic. "You're insane. I can't believe you accuse me of this. You're paranoid and controlling." Her accusations hit me like a punch to the gut. It was classic deflection, and I knew she was trying to turn the tables. I stood up from the table, feeling a whirlwind of emotions, anger, sadness, and betrayal all mixed together. "You can lie to yourself, Jess, but I'm not going to sit here and let you manipulate me into thinking I'm the problem." I felt my resolve strengthen. She was gaslighting me, and I wouldn't allow it any longer. The confrontation left me feeling raw, but it also fueled my determination. I knew I had to take action, not just for myself, but to make sure Ryan faced the consequences of his actions too. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about protecting myself from the betrayal that had infiltrated my life. As I sat alone that night, staring at the walls of our home, I felt a spark of vengeance igniting within me. I didn't just want to confront Jess. I wanted to make sure Ryan paid for what he had done. I wasn't going to be the only one suffering the fallout of this affair. It was time to get creative, time to ensure that both Jess and Ryan faced the music. And I had just the plan brewing in my mind. The next few days were a blur of heightened emotions and calculated planning. I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal, but instead of wallowing in it, I decided to channel that energy into executing my revenge. It was time to make sure Ryan faced the consequences of his actions, and I wanted Jess to feel the repercussions of her choices as well. I started by digging into Ryan's life. It wasn't hard, considering he worked at a local car dealership. I spent a few evenings researching not just him, but the dealership itself. I discovered that Ryan was known for his charm, but he also had a reputation for pushing boundaries with female clients. I wasn't the first husband to feel threatened by him, and I hoped I wouldn't be the last. I had a solid plan forming. On the surface, it would look like a harmless complaint about customer service, but beneath that, it would be the weapon that would dismantle Ryan's career. I gathered all the evidence I had, the text messages, the information from my friend Mike, and the details about the flirtation I had witnessed. I decided to craft a detailed complaint to the dealer's management about Ryan's unprofessional behavior, focusing mainly on the inappropriate nature of his interactions with Jessica. In the meantime, I kept everything under wraps from Jess. I didn't want her to suspect a thing. I acted as though I was focused on repairing our marriage, all while I was planning the downfall of both her and Ryan. I put on the act of a loving husband, taking her out for dinners and trying to engage in heartfelt conversations. But every time she mentioned Ryan, I felt the anger boil underneath my facade. One afternoon, while Jess was at work, I decided to pay a visit to the dealership. I walked in confidently, ready to execute my plan. I approached the front desk and asked for a manager, casually mentioning that I had a complaint about one of their salesmen, Ryan. I could see the receptionist's expression shift from friendly to cautious. When the manager, a middle-aged man named Tom, finally came to speak with me, I laid out my story. I told him how I had seen Ryan acting inappropriately with my wife, emphasizing the flirtation and the texts. I made it clear that I believed Ryan was crossing professional boundaries. I had rehearsed my lines, trying to sound as credible and concerned as possible. Tom listened intently, and I could see the wheels turning in his head. "I appreciate you bringing this to my attention, sir. We take these matters very seriously. If you could provide me with some evidence, that would help tremendously," he said. I handed over the text messages, portraying them as just a small part of a larger issue. I could see the concern growing on Tom's face as he read through them. "I assure you, we will look into this," he said, nodding firmly. As I left the dealership, I felt a sense of satisfaction wash over me. I had just taken the first step in ensuring that Ryan would face repercussions for his actions. It wasn't just about revenge, it was about justice, a way of reclaiming the power that Jess and Ryan had taken from me. When I returned home that night, I found Jess lounging on the couch, scrolling through her phone. I quickly masked my excitement with indifference. "Hey, how was your day?" I asked, trying to sound casual. "Oh, you know the usual, just busy at work," she replied, still glued to her screen. "How about you?" "Not much, just ran a few errands," I said, shrugging. I had to keep my cool. "Oh, I was thinking of getting us dinner from that Thai place you love. What do you think?" She looked up, a smile breaking through her earlier disinterest. "That sounds great. I could use a treat after this week." As I ordered the food, I felt a sense of bitterness mixed with satisfaction. I was playing my part well, but underneath I was a storm of emotions. I knew that my plan was just getting started. If everything went according to my scheme, Ryan would be out of a job, and Jess would be forced to face the reality of her actions. Days turned into a week, and I watched closely as the dealership's management conducted their investigation. I had made sure to stay out of the loop, letting Jess believe I was none the wiser. But the tension was palpable. Jess had become increasingly anxious, talking about how Ryan had seemed distant and unapproachable lately. It felt good to see her discomfort. She was beginning to realize that the consequences of her actions were starting to catch up to her. Eventually, the dealership called me back. "Tom invited me to come in for a meeting. We've looked into the situation you raised and we'd like to discuss it further," he said. My heart raced. This was it, the moment when Ryan's world would start to crumble. I arrived at the dealership, the adrenaline coursing through my veins. I was ready to see the fallout from my actions. I sat across from Tom, who had a serious look on his face. "It seems we have confirmed some of your concerns regarding Ryan's behavior," he began, and I felt a thrill of vindication. "We're taking appropriate action, and I wanted to discuss how we can help you further." I couldn't hide my grin. "What kind of action?" I asked, pretending to feign innocence. Tom looked uneasy as he explained, "We've decided to terminate his employment. His conduct was unprofessional, and we cannot have that kind of behavior at our dealership." I felt a rush of satisfaction that I hadn't anticipated. Ryan was out of a job and I had played a significant role in it. When I returned home that evening, Jess was already there, looking more stressed than ever. She immediately noticed something was off as I walked in. "What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost," she commented, her brows furrowing in concern. I smiled, trying to play it cool. "Oh, nothing much, just the usual business." But inside, I was reveling in the success of my plan. She would find out soon enough. It was only a matter of time before the news of Ryan's termination reached her ears. I was ready for the fallout. Little did Jess know, my revenge was just beginning. The next few days passed with Jess growing increasingly anxious. I could see the worry etched on her face, and it made me feel an odd mix of satisfaction and guilt. I had planned everything carefully, but I hadn't expected the depth of her concern for Ryan. Every time she picked up her phone, I could sense the weight of her guilt hanging in the air, and it drove me to the brink of exhilaration. Finally, the day came when Jess would learn about Ryan's termination. I had been waiting for the perfect moment to drop this bombshell. That evening, she came home earlier than usual, looking like a storm cloud had followed her all day. I could see it in her eyes. She had heard something and she was desperate to talk. "Mark, can we talk?" she said, her voice shaky. I nodded, trying to maintain my composure while inside I was practically dancing with anticipation. We sat down at the dining table and she looked at me, her eyes wide. "I heard that Ryan got fired." I nodded casually, leaning back in my chair. "Yeah, I heard that too. Strange, isn't it?" I feigned ignorance, watching as her expression shifted from confusion to realization. "What do you mean, strange?" she asked, her voice rising slightly. "You don't think it was for some harmless reason, right?" "Harmless," I echoed, letting the sarcasm drip from my voice. "You mean his flirtation with you, the texts, the way you two were practically glued together at the dealership?" I leaned forward, my gaze piercing into her. "You can't be serious, Jess." Her face turned pale as the reality of her actions came crashing down on her. "Mark, please," she stammered, her breath quickening. "I didn't mean for it to go that far. It was just fun. I thought you understood. Fun." I shot back, rising from my chair, suddenly feeling the anger bubble to the surface. "You thought it was fun to flirt with another man, to have a man text you babe. Do you have any idea how that makes me feel?" She opened her mouth to respond, but words failed her. I could see the fear in her eyes, the shock settling in as she began to comprehend the consequences of her actions. I took a deep breath, wanting to keep my cool. "You had the chance to come clean, to be honest. But instead, you chose to lie and deceive me. And now look where it's gotten you." "I didn't think it was serious. I swear it was just a phase," she pleaded, her voice cracking. "I don't even like him. I only wanted to look good for you. I wanted to feel attractive again. By cheating on me," I spat, incredulous. "You think that looking good means being unfaithful? That's not how this works, Jess." I could see her shoulders slump as the realization of her mistakes began to dawn on her. She looked defeated, and for a moment I felt a pang of sympathy. Then I remembered the betrayal, the lies, the loss of trust. I couldn't let that sympathy cloud my judgment. "Why should I believe anything you say now?" I continued, my voice steady but laced with hurt. "You had your chance to be honest and you chose to betray me. I deserve better than this." Tears began to stream down her face and I could feel my heart wavering. I wanted to yell, to scream, but I also wanted to understand how we had gotten to this point. "Do you even care about our marriage?" I asked, softer this time. "Or was it all just a game to you?" She shook her head, sobs escaping her lips. "I do care, Mark. I love you. I made a stupid mistake and I see that now. I'm so sorry." But her words felt hollow to me. "Sorry doesn't change what happened, Jess. You need to understand that what you did was hurtful, and it's going to take more than just words to fix this." There was a long, painful silence as I stared at her, trying to gauge if there was any sincerity left in her. All I could see was the broken woman before me, and it stirred conflicting feelings within me. Did I want to forgive her? Did I want to fight for what we had built together? Finally, I spoke, choosing my words carefully. "I don't know if I can forgive you right now. I need time to think about what this means for us. This isn't just about you and Ryan, it's about our marriage and the trust that's been shattered." Jess nodded, her expression a mixture of despair and regret. "I'll do whatever it takes to fix this, Mark. I'll prove to you that I can be better." The conviction in her voice was shaky, but there was a glimmer of hope. a hint that she might genuinely want to make amends. It was hard to swallow, and I felt a wave of anger crash over me. Did I want to put in the effort to rebuild? Did I even have the strength to try? As she sat there, tears streaming down her cheeks, I felt conflicted. I had taken steps to ensure Ryan faced consequences, but now I was left grappling with my own feelings in the aftermath. I had wanted revenge, but now I was faced with a decision that could shape the rest of our lives. As I left the room, the weight of my actions bore down on me. I had achieved what I set out to do. Ryan was gone, but now I had to decide if I wanted to fight for my marriage or if I should walk away. And that was a much harder battle to face than I had ever anticipated. My plan had worked, but the emotional fallout was just beginning. I found myself at a crossroads, wondering if the quest for revenge had been worth the damage it had done to my soul. The days following our confrontation felt like a haze, a swirling storm of emotions and uncertainty. Jess was doing everything she could to prove her commitment to me, but every time she tried to reach out, the memory of her betrayal clawed at me. I found it difficult to reconcile the woman who had once been my partner with the one who had chosen to betray me. I needed space, and I let Jess know that. I told her I wanted to take some time to gather my thoughts. She respected my request, though I could see the worry etched into her features. I spent most evenings alone, taking long walks with my dogs or sitting in silence at my favorite pub, nursing a drink while contemplating the future. It was during one of those evenings that I ran into Mike again, and we ended up chatting about everything that had transpired. "Man, I can't believe Jess did that to you," Mike said, shaking his head. "You deserve so much better than that." "I know, but it's complicated," I replied, feeling the weight of my decisions pressing down on me. "She's saying all the right things, but I just can't shake this feeling of betrayal. I guess I'm just struggling to decide what to do next." "Look, dude, sometimes you have to think about what you really want," Mike said, leaning in. "Do you want to try to rebuild, or is it time to cut your losses? No one's going to blame you if you walk away from this." His words resonated with me, sparking a flicker of clarity amid the confusion. I needed to take a hard look at our relationship, to really evaluate whether it was worth salvaging. Jess was trying to change, to repair the damage she had done, and I didn't want to ignore that. But the question loomed large: could I ever truly trust her again? The next evening I returned home, determined to have an open conversation. Jess was waiting for me, her eyes hopeful yet weary. "Hey, how was your day?" she asked, trying to sound casual, but I could hear the tremor in her voice. "Can we talk?" I asked, my tone serious. She nodded, and we moved to the living room, both acutely aware of the gravity of what was about to unfold. "First, I want you to know that I've thought a lot about everything," I began, searching for the right words. "Your betrayal hurt me more than I can express, and I'm not sure if I can ever fully get past it." She opened her mouth to protest, but I held up my hand. "Let me finish. I see you're trying to make amends, and I genuinely appreciate it. But the reality is, trust is not something that can be easily rebuilt." Jess nodded, her expression shifting to one of understanding. "I know I messed up, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make things right, Mark. I love you, and I don't want to lose you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. "I don't want to lose you either, Jess. But I need you to understand something. If we're going to move forward, it has to be a fresh start. No more secrets, no more lies, absolute transparency. I need to be able to trust you again." "Of course, I'll do anything," she said, her eyes pleading. "I promise I'll be an open book." "Okay," I said, cautiously optimistic. "But I also want to make sure we're both on the same page. I think it would help if we went to couples counseling. It might be beneficial to have a neutral party help us navigate this." "I think that's a great idea," Jess responded eagerly, relief washing over her features. "I want to fix this, Mark. I really do." With that agreement, we both began to breathe a little easier. It felt like a tentative step forward, a sign that we were willing to fight for our marriage. But as I lay in bed that night, I couldn't shake the nagging feeling in the back of my mind. Was I actually willing to forgive, or was I just trying to hold on to something that had already shattered? Over the next few weeks, we started going to counseling, and I tried my best to open up about my feelings. It was uncomfortable, and there were moments when I felt like I was standing at the edge of a cliff, staring into the abyss below. Jess, on the other hand, seemed genuinely committed to working through the issues, showing vulnerability that I hadn't seen before. During one of our sessions, the therapist asked Jess to share what she had learned from her actions. "I never realized how much my choices could hurt someone I love," she said, her voice trembling. "I took Mark for granted, and I thought I could have my cake and eat it too. I've learned that love is about respect and honesty, and I want to be better." Hearing her say that stung but also felt like a step towards healing. I wanted to believe that she meant it, but doubt still lingered. I was constantly questioning whether she was truly committed to change or if this was just a temporary fix to save our marriage. As we continued counseling, we also began to explore new activities together, trying to reconnect outside of the trauma of the affair. We went hiking, attended cooking classes, and even ventured out to try new restaurants. Despite the underlying tension, we were slowly starting to remember what it felt like to enjoy each other's company. But then, one evening, Jess came home with a troubled expression. "Mark, I need to talk to you about something," she said, biting her lip nervously. My heart dropped. I braced myself for the worst. "What is it?" I asked, my pulse quickening. "I ran into Ryan today," she said, looking down at the floor. "He wanted to talk and I didn't know what to do." "Why would you talk to him?" I snapped, the insecurity bubbling to the surface. "After everything that happened." I know, I didn't want to, but he cornered me at the grocery store." He seemed genuinely upset about getting fired, and he asked why. I told him it was because of unprofessional behavior, but he insisted it was unjust, she explained, her voice shaky. "He wanted to know if we could talk things out." I felt a rush of anger and betrayal course through me. "You didn't say anything to him, did you? You didn't give him any reason to think there's still something between you?" "No, I swear. I told him there's nothing between us anymore and that I'm committed to working on our marriage," she insisted. "But I wanted to be honest with you about it." I took a deep breath, trying to process my feelings. "You don't need to talk to him. He's the reason we're in this mess in the first place." Jess looked at me, her eyes pleading. "I know, and I won't do it again. I'm done with him, I promise." I nodded, trying to compose my thoughts. "I just need you to reassure me that you're serious about this. I can't keep going back and forth between trusting you and feeling like this could all fall apart again." "I am serious, Mark. I love you and I want to make this work. Please believe me," she said, her voice earnest. As we wrapped up the conversation, I felt a mix of hope and trepidation. We were making progress, but every time I thought we were moving forward, something else seemed to pull us back into uncertainty. I had to believe that Jess was sincere, or I risked losing her altogether. But could I truly trust her again? The answer remained frustratingly elusive. I realized then that the road ahead would be long and fraught with challenges, but I was willing to try if she was willing too. We had both made mistakes, but perhaps, just perhaps, we could come out on the other side stronger than before. It was going to take patience and effort, but I was ready to face whatever came next, even if it meant confronting the ghosts of our past along the way. I could only hope that our determination would lead us to the healing we both desperately craved. But as I lay in bed, my thoughts still racing, I couldn't shake the feeling that the hardest part was yet to come. As the weeks turned into months, things began to settle into a new rhythm. Jess and I continued our counseling sessions, and while the initial shock of the betrayal was still fresh, we started to build a different kind of connection. We discussed our feelings openly, and I began to notice that the walls between us were slowly coming down. There were still moments of tension, especially when I thought about Ryan or recalled Jess's previous lies, but we also created new memories, and those began to outweigh the painful ones. One night after a long day of work, Jess surprised me with dinner. She had cooked my favorite meal and set the table with candles and soft music in the background. It was such a warm, inviting scene that it caught me off guard. As I sat down, I couldn't help but admire how she had taken the time to make things special. "Wow, this is amazing, Jess," I said, genuinely impressed. "You didn't have to go through all this trouble." "I wanted to," she replied, her eyes shining. I know things haven't been easy between us, but I want to show you how much I appreciate your patience and willingness to work through everything. You mean a lot to me." We spent the evening laughing and reminiscing about happier times, sharing stories about our lives that predated the affair. It felt like we were rediscovering one another. The tension began to fade, replaced by warmth and affection. Yet beneath the surface, I still felt the haunting shadows of betrayal lurking just out of sight. As our relationship continued to heal, I found myself thinking about Ryan less and less. I had even managed to convince myself that I could trust Jess again, but lurking in the back of my mind was the understanding that forgiveness is a tricky beast. It's not linear, it's messy and complicated. Then one afternoon I got a call from Mike. He had heard about a situation at the dealership that piqued my interest. "You won't believe what just got confirmed," he said, his tone serious. "Ryan got another job at a different dealership. Apparently, he's been telling people he got fired unjustly, and he's already trying to charm his way back into the spotlight." My heart raced as a wave of anger washed over me. I thought I had put that part of my life behind me, that Ryan was out of the picture for good. "How do you know this?" I asked, trying to keep my tone steady. "They're talking about it at the local car community. A few people I know said he's been bragging about how he's getting back on his feet," Mike explained. "Just thought you should know." Hearing this information stirred a mix of emotions within me. I felt anger, but also a surprising sense of relief. Ryan was still trying to establish himself, and part of me couldn't help but wonder if he would try to contact Jess again. I could feel the old feelings of insecurity bubbling back to the surface, but I quickly reminded myself of the progress Jess and I had made. That night during our usual check-in, I decided to bring up what I had heard. "I spoke to Mike today," I said cautiously. "He mentioned Ryan is trying to get back into the car sales game at another dealership." Jess's expression changed dramatically. "What? He can't just come back after everything he did." "I thought we were done with him," she said, her voice filled with concern. "We are, but I just wanted you to be aware," I replied, watching her closely for her reaction. "I don't want you to feel uncomfortable if you see him around or if he tries to reach out." "I won't let him," she insisted, her voice firm. "I'm committed to us, Mark. I love you and I've chosen you." As I looked into her eyes, I could see her sincerity. It was a moment of clarity for me. The past would always be a part of our story, but it didn't have to dictate our future. I had spent so long focusing on revenge and resentment, but now I realized it was time to let go of that darkness and embrace the possibility of rebuilding our lives together. With that understanding, I made a choice. I'm not going to dwell on this. I want to focus on us and what we're building together. We've come so far, and I want to continue to move forward. Jess nodded, her eyes shining with gratitude. "I want that too. Let's keep working on our relationship and not let anyone from the past come between us again." In the weeks that followed, we both made a conscious effort to communicate openly about our feelings and insecurities. It wasn't always easy, but we learned to be there for each other in ways we hadn't before. Jess continued to show her commitment through her actions, and I found myself falling in love with her all over again. I started to understand that despite the pain of betrayal, we could still carve out a new path together. Jess was no longer just my wife, but my partner in navigating the complexities of our relationship. With each passing day, I felt the weight of the past lifting, replaced by hope and a renewed sense of connection. Eventually, I reached a point where I could think about Ryan without that familiar knot of anger tightening in my stomach. I realized that while my initial desire for revenge had been fueled by hurt and betrayal, what I truly wanted was peace. I had taken action to protect myself, but the real victory lay in the strength of our relationship. As we moved forward, I kept a close watch on our progress, but I also learned to trust the resilience of our love. Jess had made her mistakes, but she was genuinely working to be better, and that was worth fighting for. In the end, the story of betrayal turned into one of redemption, growth, and unwavering commitment. I had learned that love is not just about the good times, it's about weathering the storms together. And as I sat with Jess on the porch one evening, watching the sun dip below the horizon, I knew we were building a future worth believing in, one step at a time, hand in hand.